and a high honor to speak today. And I'm guessing that we can all recall the moment we experienced and saw Old Orenco for the first time. And I'm guessing, based on some of the nodding heads, that we will also be able to recall the first time that we met Bonnie. And for me, those two occasions were a few years apart. I moved here to Hillsboro in 1996 with my family, and on a random exploratory drive, turned onto Chestnut. And I was captivated because Old Orenco was special. It was from a different era, had a different cultural foundation, and was something to be treasured. And a few years later, when I was involved with Hillsboro 2020, I met Bonnie. She was a citizen representative for Old Orenco. And just like Old Orenco, she was special, had values from a different era, had a strong cultural foundation, and was someone to be treasured. But while she was Orenco, she was also the best of all of us. She was passionate, but not emotional, fierce, but not offensive. She was respectful, but she would hold you accountable. She was persistent, but never whiny or haranguing. And she was a problem solver, not a complainer. Now, in some ways, there's two types of people. People with formal authority and power, and people with moral authority and influence. The former have it because it comes with their position. They are elected officials, CEOs, college presidents, and the like. But once you're out of that position, you're also out of power. Influence is different. It comes from experience, knowledge, presence, and relationships. Influence lasts, regardless of who is in power. And I remember when Bonnie, I was on Planning Commission, and we were dealing with the housing development right here. And as you can imagine, it was a bit emotional, it was a bit contentious. And as I was looking out at the crowd, I remember seeing Bonnie's face. And Bonnie looked, we caught each other's eye, and she smiled. And you knew that things were going to be okay, the right things would happen, and no matter what, Bonnie was still your friend. Now, sometimes if you're not sure who has the power and who has the influence, the way to tell is that people with influence are sought out by those in positions of power. Bonnie had influence, and she also had the ear, to one degree or another, of Shirley Huffman, Gordon Faber, Tom Hughes, my predecessor Jerry Willey, and especially me. Now, Bonnie's influence is why we celebrate her life here today in this park. She was instrumental and influential in its creation. Along with Dirk and Dan, Jim, and others, she brought her passion, fierce advocacy, her respect, her persistence, and her solutions to help create Orenco Woods. When we broke park on this ground, I told her that I would help her walk to the shovels to keep her steady on the uneven ground. And that was true. But the hidden motivation for me was I wanted to stand next to her on such a special occasion. There were the important power people in the center, but I wanted to be next to her on the edge, and we were. And it was also a huge honor to have her stand next to me when we cut the ribbon on this park at its dedication. Side note, there was somebody who came up to me after we cut the ribbon and said, "I'd like to thank you for the $20,000. And I said, "Okay, you're welcome, but what are you talking about?" And he said, "My property value just went up with the opening of this park." And I said, "That's the person you need to thank." And I pointed to Bonnie. Now, Bonnie described Orenco as a jewel in the crown of Hillsboro. And I believe that's true. And this park is a crown jewel. It's now used for senior pictures, prom pictures, reunions. It's where we bring our out-of-town guests and my grandson and others' grandchildren as well. It's a gathering place, a memory-making place, and it is truly a go-to place here in Hillsboro. When children grow up here, this will be part of their childhood experiences and their childhood memories. And when they bring their kids back, it will still be as it was. And that's the way it should be. Bonnie's legacy is not just in our hearts and in our memories, but her legacy, her mark, is in the lives of every single person who sets foot into this park. And it will be in every person who is enchanted by Old Orenco. And her legacy will be in every person who savors it all while sitting on her bench. Now, after her passing, there was an article in our city newsletter, City Views, honoring Bonnie. And somebody said, after reading the article, that she would not like being referred to as the Queen of Orenco because that didn't fit with her humble nature, and she doesn't feel that she's any different than anybody else. And I said, you're right, that is her humble nature. But because she treated everybody else like royalty, it's appropriate to recognize her as the Queen. And so today I say, thank you, Bonnie, for your mark, for your legacy, and long live our Queen.
Woo! Thank you, Mayor.